And we are following breaking news right now. A verdict has come down in the sex assault trial of Harvey Weinstein. And right now, attorney Donna Rotunno is speaking about this verdict. Let's take a listen in.
Already prepared to say and do exactly what he was going to say and do, no matter what we said today. I think it has shown a pattern in this case from the very beginning. Mr. Weinstein really never had a fair shake from day one. And I'm not here to say that he's a victim, and I'm not here to say poor Harvey. But what I am here to say is we were looking for fairness, and we didn't get it.
What does this sentence represent for you? What does it represent for you?
Total unfairness and a complete lack of acknowledgement of what the facts and evidence of this case actually showed. I think the judge took things into consideration that never should have been taken into consideration, especially when we know in a prior case recently, the judge gave someone in a much worse circumstance 7.5 years.
So he said he felt remorse for the situation.
Anybody else? I mean, Harvey feels, you know, it's terrible. Of course it's too harsh. It's ridiculous. Harvey feels terrible. Of course he does. This is not an easy day. We hope that this sentence will speak to the appellate court in a way that will show that this has been unfair from the very beginning. And here's just one more thing that we can add to the list of things that did not show a fair, just, and impartial trial.
Does he think he's a victim? Does he think he's a victim?
What's the next step?
Well, for the yeah, sure. The appellate court will be able to review this once the appeal is filed. Obviously, that can't happen until now this portion of the case is done, and we'll go from there.
Talked about
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of issues. I think. Yeah, exactly. Damon's saying like this. You know, I think from the very beginning of this case, from the ruling on the Malinois witnesses, I think the way that the jury was selected, the fact that we asked to question people individually, discovery violations, Sandoval, juror number 11. Extreme sentences, so we can go on and on.
Harvey wanted to testify. Expound on that.
Well, there was a Sandoval ruling in this case that the judge had made. It was closed to the public, and in that ruling, the judge was going to allow a lot of things in that didn't have anything to do with sexual assault, but just who Harvey is as a person. And we believe that those things would have been so detrimental that his testimony could have then been a problem. So we had to weigh that out. So as much as I think he would have loved to tell his story, in many ways he was barred from doing so by that ruling.
Does he
talked about the friendship. He described this friendship he had with the women. Characterized that for us.
Well, sure. I mean, you have to look at this. I mean, I think we all know that based on the evidence in this case, and I think for all of the jurors, or excuse me, the journalists, if you were really being honest and truthful with yourselves, you sat in that courtroom for weeks on end. You listened to the testimony. And I think most of you that I've spoken to privately have been very candid with me about the fact that you were surprised by this verdict, given the fact that there was other relationships. And I think if you look at that and you look at Harvey himself, you know, Harvey, I think, is very confused. I think he feels very sad. I think he believed he had relationships with women that were different than the way they are now characterizing them. And if you look at their conversations via email, it would be realistic to believe that. If you looked at the way Jessica spoke about him on recorded conversations with other people, it would be realistic to believe that. If you look at Jessica's testimony when she said, yes, I was manipulative of him. Yes, I made him think these things. How did he know? That's the question. So I think he sits there very confused. It's very easy to say all these horrible things about him. But I think if you look at the circumstances in real time and you say, wait a minute, what was really going on? It's easy to come in here now and make a show and come with your lawyers and run to Good Morning America. It's easy to do that. We don't know what happened in those rooms. But what we do know is all of the circumstances that surrounded it. And I will never be able to reconcile that all of those circumstances that surrounded it are what normal, regular rape victims do.
Does he consider himself a victim? Does he consider himself a victim?
Why is so confusing to understand and know what is...
It's not about that. It's like no one was in those rooms at the time. And our job here, whether it's the jury, the judge, trier of fact, has to determine whether the accounts that people told are reasonable and beyond a reasonable doubt match the threshold. And I'm saying that we don't know what happened in those rooms, but we do know all of the other things that surrounded those circumstances. So that makes us question, at least me and many other people that I talk to, about the veracity of the statements they then made.
How did you feel about him speaking?
Does he consider himself a victim?
I'm happy that Harvey spoke. I'm happy that Harvey spoke. Harvey has been silent for years. I think Harvey could have said anything today and it wouldn't have mattered. The judge knew exactly what he was going to give him. So from Harvey's perspective, Harvey needed to do that, and I'm glad that he was able to do so.
Why no apology to the
That your
victims?
client is about to be in. How will you assure his safety at Rikers Island?
Well, you know, I wish I could assure his safety, but that's the Department of Corrections' responsibility. So hoping that they will do that. You know, so far everybody has handled him, I think, fairly and very well. He's not getting any special treatment.
Did
But
you know what he was about to say today at all? Did you
Yeah,
have
of course,
an idea?
of course, of
And
course.
did you counsel him on that?
You know, at this juncture, I don't think counsel is really something that matters. I think he was able to speak and say what he needed to say, and I was fine with that.
Donna, you mentioned new health issues. What are the new health issues?
You know, he has a right to some privacy, and so I'm not going to get into what those are. As you all know, he underwent a heart procedure, and during that procedure, they found some other issues, and they're going to have to deal with those.
Donna, why did he not apologize to his victims?
Well, I think when you have an appeal going on, I mean, remember, Harvey Weinstein has asserted his innocence, and he's going to continue to do so. So while an appeal is going on, he's not going to change his position on those issues. So that's why.
When do you think the appeal is going to be filed?
It's probably July.
Donna, looking back, anything different the defense team would have done with your strategy?
You know, I don't think there's anything different we could have done. We were faced with the evidence. We had to address that evidence, and that's exactly what we did. I'll let you ask Damon some questions now.
That's all right.
Anybody else?
Given Harvey's age, do you think there's any chance of early release?
No, I mean, when you look at somebody in Harvey's age and his health, I mean, you have to look at whether or not the judge is giving him a life sentence, right? So in New York, I think the New York lawyers can speak to that. He has to serve the majority of that sentence. I echo Donna's comments about the fairness of it, but I don't think the court accurately took that into account.
How do you think Harvey Weinstein is going to handle his sentence?
No, Harvey's tougher than a lot of you may think. Harvey Weinstein has gone through 2.5 years of this media intensity, a jury trial. He's been very fine with us. I think he's going to handle it like anybody handles it who gets incarcerated. He's going to do the best he can.
What are you guys hearing about LA? What's next? Have they been in contact?
We don't. Whenever LA is in contact with New York, we don't hear about it. We're not sure. And according to some people in New York, they never talk about anything.
But it's not clear if they're going to take Harvey today.
We don't
or
know.
in the coming days.
We don't know.
What do you think life contributions to lessen the effects of sanity?
Sure. When somebody gets sentenced by a judge, the judge is supposed to take into consideration not just the crimes of conviction, but mitigating circumstances, things that people have done in the past that are laudable. So when a criminal defendant is sentenced, it's not just, well, what did Jessica Mann say? You also have to look at their past and other instances of charitable contributions and things like that. So it's completely appropriate for his lawyers to raise those issues at a sentencing hearing.
What facilities are you hoping he's sent to? Like
One where his health can be taken care of appropriately.
Fishkill, New York, there's a hospital. I just wanted to thank the New York State court officers and the people who run this building, the clerks in the courtroom and the stenographers in the courtroom. As the representative of New York, I wanted to show my Chicago colleagues the best of New York, and I really felt like those people who work in this courthouse, and many of you in the media who are here on a regular basis, really showed off how great this city is. Of course, our criminal justice system here in New York, one of the ways it's judged is how we treat people who are really reviled, who are people who are really not very popular, and maybe the most hated people in the world. And those people are supposed to deserve the same fairness that everyone else deserves. This justice is supposed to be blind. And because today the New York City criminal justice system saw a sentence handed down that is 3 times the mean of the state average. That includes people who are predicate felons, meaning they have multiple felony convictions, unlike Mr. Weinstein. Those people are getting 8 years, and Mr. Weinstein is possibly getting 23 years. That was not a part of the New York City criminal justice system that I was proud to show my colleagues from Chicago.
Well, I will say, too, we are so grateful to the court staff. Damon and I have been treated with the utmost respect by the court sergeants and clerks and people that work in this building. We have actually enjoyed our time in New York, but we are very, very much looking forward to going home. Anybody else?
Any comment about those court documents Bob Weinstein called his brother?
Yes, I will make comments about those documents. The unbelievable release that happened the day before we were coming for sentencing, I think, again, shows the unbelievable lack of fairness that was given to Harvey Weinstein. There was no reason that those things needed to be released the day before. I think it's a shame. I think that there were problems in the company. There were problems between brothers. I think it's very sad. It's one other issue that Harvey will have to deal with as he works toward his redemption. And it was a totally unjust situation.
What
that
about
those
the
were
suggestion
released.
of childhood abuse?
I'm not commenting.
What does the sentencing say to you about the Me Too movement? And where we're at?
Nothing. It says nothing to me about the Me Too movement other than the fact that the judge probably felt some type of pressure.
Donna, about the unsealing of the documents, do you feel like any of that was improper? Like most of those documents should not have been unsealed?
Well, I mean, I think at this point that's really up to the court in terms of what they unseal. I think what was improper about it, I think that's a fair question. I think what was improper was the timing. Just as he was indicted in California the day before we're picking a jury here, all of these timings seem to be quite interesting in terms of Mr. Weinstein. Yeah, serendipitous, and they want us to believe that they're coincidental, but I don't think that they are. I think in some ways releasing those documents yesterday gives the judge, a greater leg to stand on.
He wasn't treated fairly at all. Let's just call it what it is. Not by the court, not by the jury, not by a lot of you. That's what happened. All right. The evidence in this case, we firmly believe did not establish his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about anything else than whether there was reasonable doubt in this case. And to say that there wasn't, based on the defense that we put forward, I think is outrageous. And that's how we all feel about this case.
And the pressure came from
everywhere, from you, from the public, not from you personally, ma'am. You've been very nice, but from everywhere. Think about it. Think about, we're in the middle of jury selection. There's a flash mob outside chanting, and the judge is saying, well, people outside chant all the time. Well, not when Harvey Weinstein's on trial. Every single step of this case was engineered for this moment right here. And for people not to accept that, I find pretty disingenuous. You might not agree with it, but to say that that didn't play a role, that these jurors are only human beings who tried to do the best they can, didn't hear what was going on in the media, didn't see what was going on. Let's live in reality. That's where we need to live in this case.
Can you summarize what the appeal basis will be on?
I did that about 5 minutes ago.
The jurors in this case who spoke to the press, they said they didn't assess when they were considering reasonable doubt. They didn't assess the ongoing relationships. They all said we looked at the one incident.
Well, the three said that. Yeah, that's correct. No, and I think that what's problematic about that is the fact that was 90% of the evidence in the case. And so to disregard that, I think is difficult for us to deal with, because that was most of the evidence.
And it was relevant evidence.
Correct.
It was relevant evidence that went to determine how these relationships existed. And to only look at one portion of it and not look at the rest of it, it's like watching 5 minutes of a movie and then trying to explain what that movie was all about. You can't do that. So that's what we had a problem with that. We did the best we could, as you all know, to explain these relationships the best we could by showing these emails, by showing these statements that these individuals made. The jury rejected it. There's nothing we can do about that. We would have tried the case the same way, and a different set of jurors may have said no, because a lot of the individuals that we talk to say, we have a problem with this verdict based on those communications.
Steven, if Harvey is guilty of what he's been found guilty of, do you think redemption is possible?
I think redemption is possible for anybody, whether or not he was convicted or acquitted. I think if Harvey Weinstein was found not guilty of these charges, he would still be remorseful for some of the decisions he made in his life. I think that redemption is something that everybody strives for in one way or the other. But I don't think when he said redemption today, he was talking about because he's guilty of these charges. I think that he'd be the first one to admit, as he did today, that he could have spent more time with his family, that he wasn't always the nicest person in the world. I mean, the prosecutor tried to bring up temper tantrums that he threw in the 70s as aggravation at a sentencing hearing. I mean, come on.
Were there any members of his family that came
No.
today?
No, and the reason is because if they come, their face is splattered in the news and they're written about and they're not left alone. And so Harvey asked that everybody stay away so they didn't have to endure that. So, there's a double-edged sword to all of this. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.